Theo Bryant was 41 years old, a dedicated middle school science teacher in Philadelphia, known for his calm demeanor and meticulous routines. Every morning, he rose at 5:30 a.m., brewed his coffee in the black French press he had used for over a decade, and carefully arranged his lesson plans for the day, making sure each student received individual attention. His one-bedroom apartment smelled faintly of roasted coffee beans and polished wood, the marble countertops in his modest kitchen gleaming under the soft glow of the early sunlight streaming through the blinds. He drove his Navy Ford F-150 to work, its interior worn but comfortable, familiar in every creak and dent, parked consistently in the same spot by the school's entrance. His life was simple, predictable, and quietly successful. That Saturday morning, as he sipped his coffee and reviewed his student science fair projects, something felt wrong. The familiar rhythm of his weekend was disrupted by a locked drawer in his wife Nicole's home office, slightly ajar, something he had never noticed before. Then he saw it. His heart caught briefly, though his face remained composed. The lottery ticket, the one he had purchased every Thursday for 14 years with the same numbers, carefully chosen to match family birthdays, was gone. Alongside it, divorce papers peeked out from the edge of the drawer, meticulously arranged, as if waiting for him to notice. He had no idea what was coming. Everything changed after that moment. Theo remained seated at the kitchen table, his hands steady around his coffee mug, his mind cataloging every detail. The soft hum of the radiator filled the room, mixing with the distant sounds of traffic outside and the faint rustle of leaves brushing against the window. He noted the expensive perfume lingering in the hallway where Nicole had passed moments before, the slight gleam of her diamond watch catching the sunlight, and the subtle black SUV parked at the curb, a silent witness to a life suddenly unbalanced. He observed the angles, the reflections, the minor inconsistencies, every detail a thread in the web he had to unravel. Quietly, methodically, he began to gather information, photographing receipts, scanning messages, and mentally mapping the timeline of Nicole's recent behavior. The kitchen smelled faintly of toasted bread and coffee, the marble surfaces reflecting his composed expression, every object positioned just as it should be, yet tinged with an eerie sense of betrayal. Glasses clinked softly from the dining room where Nicole had been earlier, her laughter now an echo in the walls, incongruent with the cold precision of her actions. Theo's eyes traveled across the apartment, the potted succulent by the window, the hand-woven rug on the floor, the wine glasses resting in the cabinet, all markers of a home that had become a stage for deception. Something felt off about the familiar light filtering through the blinds, the gentle creak of the floorboards under his weight, even the way the coffee steam curled into the morning air. He knew this was only the beginning. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, pay close attention to the small details, because in the next moments, the quiet life of a devoted husband would collide with an unexpected betrayal, and nothing would ever be the same. Theo Bryant woke early the next morning, the soft glow of dawn spilling through the blinds and casting long, thin stripes of light across the hardwood floors of his apartment. The kitchen smelled faintly of brewed coffee and toasted bread as he moved methodically from the countertop to the refrigerator, selecting the milk for his morning cup with careful precision. Each movement was deliberate, measured, part of a routine honed over decades of teaching and quiet domestic management. His students' assignments were neatly organized on the dining table, stacks of papers weighted down by a small paperweight shaped like a globe, a reminder of the worlds he helped them understand. Outside, the distant hum of morning traffic mingled with the soft chirping of birds, the city waking slowly as if giving him a few moments of peace before the storm of the day began. As he poured the coffee, the aroma rich and slightly nutty, something tugged at the back of his mind, a subtle unease he could not ignore. He placed his cup down and noticed a small discrepancy in the mail stack, a bill that seemed slightly out of place, a receipt that did not belong to any recent purchase. Something felt wrong. He moved to the office corner of the apartment, a small nook lined with neatly stacked textbooks, lesson plans, and his laptop, the screen still warm from the night before. He opened the laptop and began cross-referencing his calendar with the bank notifications he had meticulously recorded, noting inconsistencies and timing anomalies. Every entry, every alert, became a piece of a puzzle that he now had to assemble without raising suspicion. The soft click of the keys echoed in the quiet room, mingling with the distant sound of a garbage truck outside, the scent of coffee lingering, creating a calm but tense atmosphere. His eyes scanned the screen repeatedly, annotating each irregularity in precise detail, a mental log of observations growing steadily. The sun had climbed higher, illuminating the marble countertops, the faint gleam of his stainless steel faucet, the hand-polished cabinets reflecting light in a way that made the kitchen feel simultaneously ordinary and significant. A subtle breeze from the slightly open window carried the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint tang of the city's early morning, adding layers to his sensory awareness. Then he noticed it, the glint of a black leather envelope sticking out from under the stack of papers Nicole had left on the counter the night before, perfectly aligned, yet signaling something he had not anticipated. He did not reach for it immediately, instead allowing himself to catalogue the moment, noting the angle of light, the placement of objects, the way the morning reflected off the polished surfaces. Each detail was absorbed, forming a mental map of the apartment in its current state, every object a potential clue in a growing web of questions. He paused briefly, the steam from the coffee curling upward, the sound of his own breathing steady and calm, as he considered what steps to take next. He began photographing certain areas of the apartment, documenting the positions of luxury items such as the crystal wine glasses in the cabinet, the subtle reflections off the marble, the tiny details that suggested more than what met the eye. Everything was methodical, precise, controlled. The distant sounds of a city beginning to stir, the hum of a delivery truck, the soft bark of a dog, the occasional car door closing, created a rhythmic backdrop to his meticulous work. He noted the patterns, the irregularities, the faint impressions left by Nicole's hurried movements, all while maintaining a composed exterior. Something felt off about the morning, about the familiar light hitting familiar surfaces in unexpected ways. He leaned back slightly, eyes sweeping the room, taking in the soft texture of the rug under his feet, the muted colors of the furniture, the polished steel of his coffee mug catching the early sunlight. The apartment was calm, orderly, yet beneath the surface, a tension had begun to coil tightly, waiting to be unspooled. He could feel the anticipation, the subtle electricity of a secret yet to be fully revealed, a shift in the ordinary that carried within it the first tremors of what was to come. Something was happening, though the full scope remained hidden, a delicate tension hanging over the morning that he catalogued, analyzed, and prepared for with quiet precision. The air smelled faintly of coffee and warm bread, the soft morning light accentuating the luxury cues scattered through the apartment, each detail serving as a marker in the unfolding narrative. Theo knew that every observation mattered, every small detail could be a thread leading to the larger picture, and he held himself steady, patient, deliberate, as the day's quiet routine became the foundation for the investigation unfolding in his mind. Theo Bryant spent the rest of the morning moving through his apartment with a heightened awareness, each sound and movement magnified in his mind as he catalogued the subtle shifts in the environment. The sunlight had grown brighter, striking the polished marble countertops and casting reflections on the crystal wine glasses lined neatly in the cabinet. His eyes flicked to the silver-framed photographs of family moments on the walls, each image now carrying a weight of unspoken tension. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the distant rumble of a passing delivery truck, all became cues, markers in the unfolding puzzle. Something felt off. He noticed the faint scent of an expensive perfume lingering in the air, a trace that seemed slightly out of place against the mundane aroma of coffee and toast. Then he saw it, a subtle alignment of objects on the countertop that suggested deliberate placement, an arrangement that only made sense in the context of careful observation. He had no idea what was coming, but every detail he noted added to the growing clarity of the situation. Theo moved to the living room and observed the pattern of sunlight falling across the rug, the angle of shadow stretching from the furniture, the quiet presence of the black leather sofa that had been there for years, each object a silent witness to the morning's unfolding tension. His mind catalogued Nicole's habits, her patterns of movement, the timing of her departures and returns, the small inconsistencies in her schedule, and the faint marks of luxury living that now seemed almost intentionally conspicuous. The soft clink of a wine glass resting on the dining table, left there from the previous evening, captured his attention, reflecting light across the polished wood surface in a way that drew his gaze. He noted the subtle details of the kitchen cabinetry, the brushed steel handles, the slight reflection of light off the marble, all integrated into the sensory map he was building. Theo paused briefly, taking a slow sip of coffee, feeling the warmth spread through his hands and the gentle aroma filling his senses, grounding him even as his mind raced through the anomalies he had observed. Then he noticed Nicole's planner on the counter, open to the current week, the notes meticulous yet revealing subtle shifts in timing and intention. He leaned closer, noting the pen strokes, the precise dates, and the small annotations that suggested planning beyond what she had shared. Every detail was recorded in his memory, each anomaly feeding into a growing awareness of the betrayal that had silently crept into his life. The soft morning light filtered through the blinds, accentuating the faint textures of the furniture, the subtle gleam of the stainless steel faucet, and the clean lines of the marble countertops. Theo remained calm, observing, calculating, absorbing the full scene, and preparing the mental framework for the steps ahead. Something in the rhythm of the apartment felt charged, the ordinary infused with anticipation, a quiet tension that promised revelation. The distant sound of traffic increased slightly as the city continued to awaken, birds chirped softly outside, the faint scent of cut grass wafted through the open window, and each small detail seemed to signal a larger pattern yet to be fully understood. He catalogued the irregularities, the angle of the light, the placement of objects, the scent lingering in the air, the subtle glint of luxury items that now appeared almost strategically positioned. Each observation sharpened his focus, a methodical preparation for uncovering the hidden layers of the morning's surprising events. He moved through the apartment with careful attention, checking surfaces, noting reflections, measuring distances with his eyes, observing textures, and silently logging every sensory input. The familiar apartment had transformed into a stage for discovery, each ordinary object imbued with potential significance. Something felt wrong. Then he saw it again, a subtle clue in the alignment of a photograph and a paperweight, a detail that connected multiple observations into a coherent signal of hidden intention. He had no idea what was coming, yet he felt a growing anticipation, the tension rising, and the quiet realization that the day would not unfold as any morning had before. Everything was charged, every sensory cue heightened, every observation purposeful, as Theo Bryant continued to navigate the calm surface of his home while meticulously mapping the layers of betrayal, suspicion, and revelation beneath. Theo Bryant returned to his home office after checking on his students' assignments for the day, the soft afternoon light filtering through the blinds and casting a warm glow across the polished surfaces. The hum of his laptop, the faint creak of the chair beneath him, and the distant murmur of the city beyond the window created a serene background that contrasted sharply with the tension building in his mind. He carefully placed his coffee cup on the edge of the desk, its black ceramic surface reflecting the light, and opened the stack of mail that had arrived that morning. Among the usual bills and flyers, one envelope stood out, thick and cream-colored, its weight unusual, the texture rich and slightly embossed. He picked it up, noting the faint scent of high-end paper and ink, a luxury detail that contrasted with the ordinary correspondence he expected. Something felt wrong. As he broke the seal and slid the contents onto the desk, his eyes immediately fell upon a set of divorce papers, neatly arranged and signed in precise handwriting, accompanied by a brief note that seemed carefully measured in its tone. Then he saw it, tucked beneath the papers, a document that confirmed what he had suspected but could not yet fully comprehend. Nicole had executed plans to remove him from the apartment and secure the assets she believed were hers. He had no idea what was coming. Everything changed after that moment. Theo's initial reaction was not outward, he remained seated, hands resting lightly on the desk, eyes scanning each line of the documents, reading, rereading, and mentally annotating every detail. The faint scent of coffee mingled with the smooth aroma of polished wood and the subtle hint of Nicole's perfume still lingering from earlier, layering the environment with cues of domestic normalcy and understated luxury. His gaze traveled to the carefully stacked textbooks, the small globe paperweight, the photographs of classroom projects pinned to the corkboard, each item grounding him even as the realization of betrayal unfolded. He noted the precision of the signatures, the dates, and the formal phrasing, cataloging inconsistencies and potential avenues for verification, his mind already mapping the sequence of events that had led to this confrontation. The gentle afternoon breeze filtered through the slightly open window, brushing against the edges of the curtains, carrying with it the faint smell of cut grass and distant city streets, mingling with the subtle reflections on the marble countertop and glass surfaces around him. Theo reached for his notebook, jotting down observations with deliberate care, the scratch of pen on paper almost imperceptible but deliberate, forming a mental map of timing, placement, and intent. Each detail, from the angle of the sunlight to the positioning of the black leather chair by the window, became a potential clue in the larger picture he was beginning to assemble. He paused briefly, allowing himself to absorb the scene, the calm of the room in stark contrast to the upheaval represented in the documents before him. The faint clink of a wine glass in the cabinet caught his attention, the polished reflection of the marble countertop emphasizing the quiet elegance of the space, the ordinary objects suddenly taking on an extraordinary significance in the context of the unfolding events. He noted the consistency of the shadows cast across the floors, the subtle alignment of items that suggested planning beyond casual arrangement, and the faint whisper of air moving through the room, all contributing to a growing sense of deliberate orchestration. Theo remained composed, cataloging each sensory input with meticulous attention, each observation contributing to a layered understanding of the betrayal at hand. The light shifted as the afternoon progressed, casting different angles across the furniture, highlighting minor details that he had not noticed before, the edge of a photograph, the tilt of a desk lamp, the faint reflection in the stainless steel faucet. Each element reinforced the careful precision with which Nicole had orchestrated the situation, and Theo recorded it all silently, preparing mentally for the steps he would need to take. Something felt wrong, yet he remained steady, observing, analyzing, and silently constructing a strategy to navigate the sudden upheaval, the apartment itself becoming a canvas of clues and revelations that would guide him through the unexpected challenge of the day. Theo Bryant sat back in his chair, eyes narrowing slightly as he revisited the documents on his desk, tracing the sequence of events with a meticulous attention to detail. He noted the dates, the signatures, the minor discrepancies in timing, and the subtle shifts in Nicole's schedule that suggested premeditation rather than coincidence. Something felt off, though the apartment remained calm, bathed in the gentle glow of the late afternoon sun streaming through the blinds. He opened his laptop, cross-referencing bank statements, utility bills, and past communications, cataloging every anomaly with precise annotations in a digital spreadsheet. The soft hum of the laptop fan blended with the faint creak of the chair beneath him, the air carrying the aroma of freshly brewed coffee lingering from earlier, punctuated by the subtle scent of polished wood and marble countertops. His gaze swept the room, noting the alignment of objects, the faint reflection of sunlight on crystal wine glasses, the polished steel of the faucet, and the strategic placement of documents that indicated deliberate organization. Each detail became a marker in a larger puzzle he was assembling silently, mentally mapping the flow of Nicole's movements and the hidden threads of planning that had led to the current situation. Theo observed the small signs, a paper slightly shifted on the counter, a pen left in a place that suggested it had been handled carefully, a faint smudge on a photograph that hinted at unnoticed interaction. The distant sounds of the city, a car door closing, the muffled chatter of pedestrians, created a rhythmic backdrop to his calculations, the ordinary noise grounding him even as his mind raced with possibilities. He paused to take a sip of coffee, the warmth steadying his focus, allowing him to consider each potential inconsistency without letting emotion dictate reaction. Then he noticed the subtle details in Nicole's handwriting, the spacing between words, the consistency of dates, all revealing a pattern he had not fully realized before. He leaned forward slightly, the sunlight catching the edge of his laptop screen, highlighting the spreadsheets and notes he had carefully compiled over the morning. Every sensory cue, from the faint sound of the radiator to the gentle rustle of papers as he adjusted them, contributed to a comprehensive awareness of the environment and the unfolding events. The polished surfaces of the countertops, the carefully arranged photographs, the black leather of the office chair, all became part of an immersive map of observation that allowed him to maintain composure while absorbing critical information. He methodically documented each clue, from the angle of the light to the reflections on glass, the subtle scent of perfume, and the precise positioning of personal items, integrating them into a coherent understanding of Nicole's actions and intentions. Something felt wrong, yet he remained entirely composed, cataloging evidence, noting patterns, and quietly preparing a mental strategy for navigating the unfolding complexity. The afternoon light shifted slightly, casting new angles across the marble, the edges of documents, and the surfaces of the apartment, revealing nuances he had not observed before. Theo continued to work silently, every observation feeding into a growing map of understanding, as he carefully measured, documented, and analyzed each element of the environment and every subtle hint of behavior that hinted at the hidden truth. He had no idea what was coming next, but each step he took, each note he made, strengthened his grasp on the situation, laying the groundwork for uncovering the full extent of the betrayal while maintaining an unshakable calm in the midst of uncertainty. The subtle sounds, the shifting light, the faint aromas, and the polished surfaces all combined to create a cinematic environment in which Theo Bryant methodically pieced together the anomalies, preparing for the revelation that was quietly gathering momentum. Theo Bryant leaned closer to the laptop, his fingers resting lightly on the keyboard as he began to trace every financial transaction and correspondence linked to Nicole's recent behavior. The spreadsheet before him expanded with numbers, dates, and annotations that seemed mundane at first glance but revealed subtle irregularities when observed in sequence. He noticed small transfers that did not align with typical household expenses, messages sent at odd hours, and patterns suggesting coordination beyond casual activity. Something felt wrong, a thread that needed careful unraveling. He opened his notebook and began to map out the relationships between each observation, connecting dots between times, locations, and the subtle luxury cues that punctuated Nicole's routine, from the brief shimmer of her designer watch to the polished marble surfaces reflecting sunlight in the kitchen. Outside, the city noises filtered softly through the window, distant sirens, the hum of traffic, the occasional bark of a dog, all forming a steady backdrop to his focused examination. The faint scent of brewed coffee lingered, mingling with the subtle trace of Nicole's perfume that still hung in the air, a sensory cue that heightened his awareness and sharpened his concentration. He jotted down notes about patterns in her phone activity, cross-referencing them with bank statements, calendar entries, and deliveries he had observed. Each anomaly was documented, each irregularity forming a part of the larger puzzle that Theo was quietly assembling. Then he noticed a sequence of emails, timestamps precisely aligned with the minor inconsistencies in other records, suggesting planning rather than chance. He leaned back slightly, letting the afternoon light illuminate the pages of his notebook, the polished surfaces of the room emphasizing the calm and order he maintained even as the evidence of betrayal accumulated before him. He catalogued each element, the angle of light across the countertop, the alignment of objects on the desk, the subtle reflections in the glassware, the gentle hum of the laptop fan, the faint scent of coffee and polished wood, the distant sounds of the city, integrating them into a comprehensive mental map. Theo's mind operated methodically, recognizing the need to remain composed, recording each observation without reaction, maintaining a precise internal record of the unfolding situation. The clarity of thought allowed him to anticipate potential moves, to prepare for eventual confrontations with full understanding of the circumstances. Something felt off, yet every detail he absorbed, from the gleam of the marble countertop to the subtle placement of documents and luxury cues, fed into a growing awareness of Nicole's orchestration and his own path forward. He documented patterns, linked anomalies, and silently prepared a framework for responding strategically, all while the late afternoon sun shifted, casting new shadows and reflections across the room, reinforcing the cinematic quality of his careful surveillance. The apartment, quiet and orderly, became a laboratory of observation, each object and sensory cue serving as a marker in the investigation that Theo Bryant conducted with patient precision, cataloging, analyzing, and preparing to activate the knowledge he had meticulously gathered. Theo Bryant leaned back slightly in his chair as the afternoon sun shifted, casting new angles of light across the marble countertops and polished wooden surfaces. He opened his secure email, scanning messages with careful attention to detail, noting correspondence that could help verify the ownership of the lottery ticket. The soft hum of the laptop fan mixed with the distant city sounds, the faint rustle of leaves brushing against the window creating a quiet rhythm that allowed him to focus. He reviewed bank statements, receipts, and small transactions, mapping patterns and inconsistencies in Nicole's recent activities. Each note, each anomaly, became a thread in the complex web he was assembling, revealing the subtle orchestration behind her confident demeanor. He reached for his phone and discreetly called an old friend, someone he trusted completely, who had knowledge of legal procedures and financial verification. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, and immediately began assisting in cross-checking records, confirming timelines, and preparing a preliminary strategy for approaching the situation. Something felt wrong, yet Theo remained composed, documenting every detail meticulously while silently analyzing the potential implications of each discovery. He walked to the window and observed the city beyond, the morning sunlight glinting off the black SUV parked near the curb, the reflective surfaces of high-rise windows, and the faint sparkle of chrome on vehicles passing by, integrating these visual cues into his mental map of the day's events. The faint aroma of coffee lingered in the air, mixing with the polished wood scent from the desk and shelves, creating a sensory backdrop that contrasted the subtle tension growing within him. He jotted notes in his leather-bound notebook, each entry precise, detailing times, locations, and observations, forming a coherent framework for understanding Nicole's recent movements and potential intentions. Theo reviewed photos of the apartment layout, the alignment of furniture, the position of documents, and the reflections in mirrors and glassware, each element becoming a critical piece of the larger investigation. He cataloged timestamps from emails and text messages, cross-referenced them with observed behaviors, and noted small inconsistencies that suggested deliberate planning rather than coincidence. Each sensory input, the soft click of his keyboard, the hum of the air conditioning, the faint glow of sunlight on polished surfaces, the subtle reflection of the city outside, was absorbed into his analysis, providing a layered understanding of the environment and Nicole's interactions. Theo remained silent, focused, deliberate, ensuring that every observation was captured accurately without letting emotion dictate his responses. The apartment became a laboratory of precision, each object, scent, sound, and reflection integrated into a comprehensive assessment that would guide his next steps. Then he noticed a pattern emerging in the documentation that linked financial transactions to specific behaviors and movements, reinforcing the need for methodical verification and careful planning. Something felt off, yet the clarity of the pattern provided him with a framework to anticipate potential outcomes and ensure he could act with strategic advantage. He continued cataloging evidence, coordinating with his trusted ally, and preparing the groundwork for a systematic approach, each observation strengthening his awareness and control over the situation. The polished surfaces of the kitchen and office reflected the late afternoon light, the subtle shine emphasizing the contrast between ordinary domesticity and the hidden intricacies of the unfolding events. Theo Bryant maintained a calm exterior, while internally constructing a map of evidence, behavior, and timing that would allow him to reveal the truth at the right moment, quietly orchestrating the next steps of a plan grounded in meticulous observation and strategic patience. Theo Bryant leaned forward in his chair, the late afternoon sunlight illuminating the polished marble countertops and casting long reflections across the kitchen floor. He opened a secure drawer where he kept carefully organized documents and envelopes, pulling out the ticket that had been hidden for weeks, the small print glinting under the light as he held it in his hand. The soft hum of the laptop, the faint creak of the chair beneath him, and the distant city sounds created a quiet backdrop that contrasted with the rising intensity of the moment. Something felt wrong, and yet, holding the ticket, he could feel the weight of hidden power, the confirmation that everything Nicole believed she had controlled was in his possession. He studied the numbers, comparing them to official announcements and bank records, every detail confirming his ownership and the legal standing that had been silently building beneath the surface. The air carried the faint aroma of polished wood and coffee, with a subtle note of Nicole's perfume lingering as if marking the path she had taken, each scent layered in the room, contributing to the cinematic quality of his observation. Theo carefully aligned the ticket with the supporting documents, the envelope of official verification, and the notarized statements he had collected with the help of his trusted ally, each piece reinforcing the hidden competence that had been quietly growing over time. He noted the polished steel of the faucet reflecting the light, the marble countertop edges catching the sun, the black leather chair by the window angled precisely as it had been for months, all ordinary objects now forming a stage for the revelation to come. Then he began to organize the supporting evidence methodically, cross-referencing financial records, email correspondences, and timestamps from earlier interactions to create a clear, irrefutable narrative that aligned with his discovery. The subtle sounds of the city outside, the occasional car door, the distant hum of traffic, the soft rustle of leaves, mixed with the quiet domestic details, the ticking of the wall clock, the hum of the radiator, the faint creak of floorboards under his careful steps, creating a layered environment where every sensory cue contributed to the unfolding plan. He paused to sip coffee, the warmth grounding him while his mind catalogued each element of Nicole's miscalculations, the arrangement of her actions inadvertently providing him with clarity and leverage. Each reflection, each glint of sunlight on crystal wine glasses, each polished surface of the apartment became a marker of control, reinforcing the hidden competence he had cultivated quietly, patiently, and deliberately. Something felt off, yet Theo's focus sharpened, every movement precise, every observation contributing to the strategic activation of his assets and the careful orchestration of the next steps. The late afternoon light shifted, casting elongated shadows across the floor, emphasizing the polished wood and marble surfaces, the subtle luxury cues that defined the apartment and reinforced the contrast between ordinary domestic life and the underlying power Theo now wielded. He catalogued every detail, aligning documents, verifying numbers, and mentally rehearsing the timing and presentation of the revelation that would finally display the depth of his hidden competence. The apartment was calm, the sun reflecting softly across polished surfaces, the air carrying layers of scent and sound, while Theo Bryant, steady and composed, prepared to activate the knowledge, leverage, and assets that had been quietly amassed, ready to reveal the truth in a way that would shift the balance entirely. Theo Bryant sat quietly in the living room, the soft glow of the early evening sun reflecting off the polished marble countertops and casting long shadows across the oak floors. He allowed himself a measured breath, taking in the ordinary domestic sounds, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the faint ticking of the wall clock, the subtle rustle of curtains as the breeze shifted, and yet each detail felt charged with the knowledge he had meticulously gathered. The black leather chair by the window seemed to anchor the space, every polished surface and crystal wine glass acting as a silent witness to the calm authority he now held. Something felt wrong, yet the quiet gave him an opportunity to maintain composure, to prepare for the moment when he would activate the assets he had verified and confirm the truth of his hidden competence. He organized the supporting documents, aligning the lottery ticket, notarized statements, and email confirmations with meticulous care, ensuring that each piece of evidence reinforced the narrative he had constructed internally. The polished steel faucet reflected the evening light, the marble shimmered with understated elegance, and the scent of coffee lingering in the air mingled with the faint trace of Nicole's perfume, creating a sensory backdrop that heightened his awareness. He reviewed the timeline once more, noting each anomaly, each small detail of Nicole's behavior that had previously seemed inconsequential but now formed a clear pattern of overconfidence and miscalculation. Then he began to draft the plan for revealing the hidden truth, the order of presentation, the timing of each disclosure, and the sequence of observations that would ensure the maximum clarity and impact without betraying emotion. Every reflection, every subtle cue, the faint clink of crystal, the soft shadow of furniture, the angled sunlight on the marble, was catalogued mentally as part of a cinematic tableau that Theo would activate at the perfect moment. He paused, allowing himself to absorb the scene, noting the way the light softened against the walls, how the city beyond the window had begun to settle into evening, the distant hum of traffic providing a rhythmic undertone to his careful plotting. Something felt off, yet every aspect of the apartment, from the polished surfaces to the luxury cues of glassware, marble, and leather, reinforced the precision of his control and the inevitability of the coming reveal. Theo moved between his observations, spreadsheets, and notes with deliberate care, cataloging each sensory input, each inconsistency, and each subtle clue, building a comprehensive understanding that allowed him to remain completely composed. The faint sound of leaves rustling, the soft glow of sunset reflecting off the kitchen surfaces, and the precise alignment of documents created an immersive environment in which every detail mattered. He felt the tension rise subtly, a quiet anticipation that blended with his calm exterior, reinforcing the readiness he had cultivated over days of observation and analysis. Then, without haste or visible change, he reviewed the supporting evidence once more, ensuring that each fact, timestamp, and detail aligned perfectly, forming an unassailable foundation for the activation of his hidden assets and the strategic reversal of control. Something felt wrong, yet it was precisely that awareness that allowed Theo Bryant to remain fully present, fully prepared, and entirely in command of the next moments, where the culmination of meticulous observation, calculated patience, and hidden competence would converge into the revelation that shifted the balance entirely in his favor. Theo Bryant observed Nicole from a distance as she moved through the apartment with an ease that now seemed naive in its confidence. She believed the documents she had arranged, the plans she had set in motion, and the illusion of control she projected were unassailable. Something felt wrong, yet her every movement betrayed overconfidence, the casual way she adjusted a picture on the wall, the slight smile when she thought Theo was unaware of her latest arrangement. He allowed her to proceed, noting each detail with precision, the way the sunlight glinted off her watch, the polished marble countertops reflecting the golden afternoon light, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the aroma of coffee, and the subtle alignment of objects she had meticulously positioned to create the impression of authority. Theo's eyes followed her silently as she inspected the crystal wine glasses, straightened the leather cushions on the black sofa, and adjusted the papers on the oak desk, each gesture reinforcing her belief that she had the upper hand. The soft hum of the laptop, the ticking of the wall clock, and the distant sounds of traffic outside created a rhythm against which Theo measured her confidence and misjudgment. He made no move, spoke no word, and allowed the apparent victory to settle in her demeanor, cataloging every clue that her overconfidence offered. Something felt off, yet he remained composed, every micro-expression, every adjustment of her posture, every subtle breath was noted and integrated into the mental map he had been constructing over days of careful observation. The light shifted across the polished surfaces, highlighting the edges of documents, the gleam on the faucet, and the reflective surfaces of the apartment, emphasizing both the elegance and the vulnerability of her current state. Theo moved deliberately within his observation point, eyes sweeping the room to track Nicole's movements, recording mentally the timing of her steps, the angle of her gaze, and the confidence radiating from her posture. Each detail reinforced the latent imbalance in the room, the quiet yet undeniable power that Theo now held through the careful preparation of evidence and validation of his assets. He observed the subtle interactions of light on glassware, the shadow angles across the marble floor, and the positioning of furniture that she had believed concealed her plans, all forming a cinematic tableau in which her overconfidence became the clearest signal of his impending reveal. Something felt wrong, yet that awareness allowed him to maintain complete control, absorbing the sensory cues of polished wood, reflective surfaces, faint perfume, and sunlight while silently preparing to activate the culmination of strategy that would overturn the false sense of authority Nicole carried. He catalogued every movement, every micro-expression, every alignment of objects with patient precision, ensuring that the moment of exposure, when it came, would unfold with maximum clarity and impact, transforming her overconfidence into the leverage he had patiently cultivated. The room remained calm, bathed in the warm glow of late afternoon, yet each carefully observed detail signaled the subtle tension that would soon become unmistakable, as Theo Bryant readied the final phase of his strategic, patient, and completely controlled response. Theo Bryant finally moved with quiet deliberation, pulling the folder containing the lottery ticket and supporting documents from the drawer and placing it squarely on the marble countertop. The late afternoon sun caught the edges of the papers, reflecting light across the polished surface and the crystal wine glasses nearby, creating a cinematic glow that seemed almost deliberate in its precision. He opened his laptop and projected evidence onto the screen, cross-referencing dates, transactions, and notarized confirmations that validated his ownership, each element aligning seamlessly to form an undeniable narrative. Something felt wrong in the calm of the room, a tension that had been building, yet he remained composed, eyes scanning every reflection, every shadow, every subtle detail in the apartment. The black leather chair near the window anchored the space, the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the faint tick of the wall clock establishing a rhythmic backdrop for the careful orchestration that was about to unfold. Theo arranged the documents methodically, layering the evidence in a sequence that would reveal the hidden truth with clarity and impact, the polished wood of the desk reflecting each movement and amplifying the visual tension. He noted the alignment of crystal glasses, the gleam of the marble countertop, and the subtle shimmer of the faucet, every luxury cue a silent testament to the precision of his preparation. Then he began to activate the sequence, opening emails to confirm timestamps, aligning transaction records, and preparing the visual display of evidence so that Nicole's miscalculations and overconfidence would become undeniably visible. Each file, each photograph, each notarized document was arranged to highlight the hidden competence he had quietly nurtured, the patience that allowed him to control the timing of every revelation. The faint aroma of coffee lingered in the air, blending with the subtle hint of perfume that Nicole had left behind, the ordinary sense layered over the extraordinary significance of the moment. Theo adjusted the lighting subtly, letting the late sun cast long shadows across the surfaces, emphasizing both elegance and authority, creating an immersive environment in which every reflection and detail reinforced the narrative of control he was about to reveal. The hum of the laptop fan, the soft creak of the chair, the distant city sounds, and the polished surfaces formed a stage for the disclosure that was imminent. Something felt off in the calm of the room, yet the arrangement and clarity of evidence allowed Theo to remain fully composed, his movements deliberate, measured, and precise, each step reinforcing the inevitability of the revelation. He documented the final alignment of evidence mentally, noting each reflection, each glint, each subtle cue of light and texture that would amplify the impact of the disclosure. Then, with complete control over the timing and presentation, he initiated the sequence, projecting the comprehensive evidence onto the laptop and arranging supporting documents visibly across the countertop. The interplay of sunlight, reflective surfaces, crystal, marble, and polished wood emphasize the gravity of the moment, creating a cinematic environment in which Nicole's overconfidence and unexamined assumptions would be confronted with the full weight of Theo Bryant's meticulous preparation. Every detail was deliberate, every sensory input catalogued, and every element of the apartment became part of the exposure, the hidden money, the notarized confirmations, and the precise timeline converging to demonstrate the depth of his competence and control. Nicole Bryant froze mid-step, her eyes widening as the array of documents, spreadsheets, and the lottery ticket spread across the marble countertop came fully into focus. She had believed in her unchallenged control, in the precision of her planning, yet the meticulous arrangement and irrefutable evidence revealed something she had never anticipated, Theo's hidden competence and undeniable ownership. Something felt wrong, and the subtle shift in her posture betrayed the first flicker of recognition. Her lips parted slightly, a soft intake of breath signaling the dawning comprehension that her assessment of him had been gravely mistaken. The late afternoon sunlight slanted through the blinds, catching the polished surfaces of the countertop and reflecting across the crystal wine glasses and the black leather chair, accentuating the contrast between her earlier confidence and the shock now settling into her expression. Theo remained composed, observing her reaction, noting the precise moment when disbelief began to register, the way her gaze flicked from the documents to the laptop screen, each line of evidence reinforcing the narrative she had overlooked. The faint aroma of coffee lingered, mingling with Nicole's perfume, the ordinary domestic sense layered over an extraordinary revelation that seemed almost tangible in the room. Something felt wrong to her, yet Theo's steady presence, the deliberate arrangement of evidence, and the subtle glint of polished marble and steel made the moment both intimate and cinematic. Her hand reached instinctively toward the documents, then hesitated, hovering as the reality of her miscalculation unfolded. Each item, the reflective surfaces, the alignment of the papers, the careful sequencing of transactions and notarized confirmations, added weight to the truth she had failed to consider. She moved closer, eyes scanning for any oversight, any gap, yet each line, each annotation, confirmed what Theo had silently cultivated, a foundation of hidden power and meticulous observation that she could not dispute. The sunlight shifted, emphasizing the edges of the documents, the faint shimmer on the crystal, the polished steel of the faucet, and the gentle texture of the marble, all underscoring the inevitability of the revelation. Her breathing became shallow, subtle yet audible, echoing faintly against the walls of the apartment, while the city beyond continued its distant rhythm, a soft hum contrasting with the intensity of the emotional collapse unfolding within the room. Something felt wrong, and as she finally looked directly at Theo, the calm, composed expression on his face reflected a certainty she had never anticipated. The balance had shifted entirely, her overconfidence dismantled by the clear presentation of evidence and the unspoken authority of his controlled reaction. Each micro-expression, each subtle shift in her posture, revealed the realization that she had misjudged him completely, that her earlier assumptions had been entirely misplaced. The polished wood, marble, and glass surfaces of the apartment seemed to emphasize the gravity of the moment, the interplay of light and shadow mirroring the sudden inversion of power. Nicole's eyes lingered on the lottery ticket, on the notarized confirmations, on the precise organization that revealed not only the truth but also the patience and foresight that Theo had applied throughout. She inhaled slowly, a sign of her emotional processing, the room silent except for the soft hum of the city outside, the faint tick of the wall clock, and the subtle shifting of sunlight across the surfaces. Something felt wrong, and finally, she understood the full scope of what had transpired. Every calculation, every careful observation, and every silent move Theo had made was now laid bare, exposing her misjudgment and the depth of his hidden competence in a quiet, inescapable revelation. Theo Bryant leaned back in the quiet of the evening, the soft glow of city lights filtering through the blinds and reflecting off the polished marble countertops and crystal wine glasses, a subtle shimmer that highlighted the calm authority he now carried. The apartment, once ordinary and filled with routine, now felt like a space meticulously aligned with the truth he had revealed and the control he had quietly claimed. He moved slowly through the room, noting the way the light shifted across the black leather chair and the polished wooden floors, every reflection reinforcing the subtle elegance and power of the environment he had maintained. The faint aroma of coffee lingered, mingling with the hint of perfume that had become a marker of the past tension, now layered under the quiet satisfaction of a strategic victory. Something felt different in the stillness, a sense of balance restored, and yet the cinematic clarity of the room emphasized the thoroughness of the revelation. Theo checked the placement of the lottery ticket and documents one final time, ensuring the arrangement reflected both precision and completion, every detail accounted for in the comprehensive understanding he had built over days of patient observation and calculated action. He walked slowly to the window, looking out at the city streets below, the reflective surfaces of passing vehicles catching the soft glow of streetlights and neon signs, a subtle parallel to the layered reality of the apartment behind him. The faint tick of the wall clock, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, and the soft rustle of curtains in the breeze created a rhythm that underscored the serenity of the moment, the contrast between the chaos of earlier discoveries and the composed finality now in place. He allowed himself a quiet exhale, appreciating the full scope of what had been achieved. Every observation, every subtle clue, every strategic pause had culminated in a revelation that restored equilibrium and clarified the hidden dynamics of control and competence. The polished marble and wood reflected his presence in a way that seemed to affirm the methodical patience and strategic planning that had guided him, and the late evening light added a cinematic softness to the contours of the apartment, highlighting both the luxury and the precision embedded in his environment. Theo moved to the countertop, touching the edge of the marble lightly, feeling the cool smoothness beneath his fingertips, a grounding sensation that reinforced the calm assurance he now carried. The apartment was quiet, each object in its place, from the crystal wine glasses to the black leather chair, to the subtle sheen of the stainless steel faucet, all resonating with a sense of order restored and life quietly upgraded. He took a final glance at the documents, the carefully organized evidence, and the lottery ticket, recognizing the completion of a patient, deliberate process that had turned overconfidence into clarity, miscalculation into acknowledgement, and hidden competence into an undeniable reality. The room exuded a quiet confidence, the interplay of light, reflection, and texture emphasizing the strategic patience and composure that Theo Bryant had maintained throughout. He felt the subtle weight of victory, calm and measured, as he allowed himself to fully inhabit the restored equilibrium, knowing that each step, each observation, and each deliberate action had led to a peaceful resolution and an upgraded life defined by dignity, clarity, and control over both his